Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 10-minute Bible lesson. We appreciate you joining us today. We've been doing our lessons in the book of Genesis. There's a lot in the book of Genesis, and right now we're studying about the life of Jacob. Now, we know that Jacob had to flee his brother. He was afraid his brother said he was going to kill him, and he arrived in Haran and met Rachel. Rachel was his uncle's daughter, and she was taking care of her dad's sheep, and she was a shepherdess. And so he agreed, that is to say, Jacob agreed with Rachel's dad to work for him for 7 years for the hand in marriage of Rachel because he loved Rachel. But here's the thing that happened. His father-in-law tricked him. And when it came time for him to receive his wife, his father-in-law put her sister in the wedding tent. And so when Jacob woke up the next morning, it was Leah, the older sister. And so that was crazy. So what did he do? He agreed to work another 7 years for Rachel. And so time went by. And it ended up with Jacob having 4 wives. Now, I think in our last video, I messed up. I got a little... I don't know, my math was really off. I think I said he had 6 wives. I was trying to give him more. Listen, 4 is plenty, isn't it? So he had 4. He had Leah, and then he had Rachel, and he had their handmaids, Bilhah and Zilpah. And so he had all of those. So he had 4 wives, and a lot of time has passed now that we're going to be reading about. And now Jacob has 11 sons and 1 daughter. And so he thinks it's time to leave. He's been there a long time. And this is what it says in Genesis chapter 30, verses 25 and 26. And it came to pass when Rachel had borne Joseph that Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away, that I may go to my own place and to my own country. Give me my wives and my children from whom I have served you, and let me go, for you know my service which I have done for you." So his uncle didn't want him to leave. In fact, he's trying to get him to stay because he knew that since Jacob had joined and worked for him in taking care of his flocks and his herds, that they had increased. He knew that. And another thing that he knew it was because of God. Because God had blessed Jacob and increased all of that for him. And so he said, "We don't want you to leave." He said, "You tell me what your wages are." And so Jacob said this. He said, "Well, I want you to give me the speckled and spotted goats and the brown sheep or the brown lambs, and that'll be my wages." And here's what God did. God caused the spotted and the speckled goats and the brown lambs and sheep to start increasing. He just blessed them and they started increasing. And at the same time, God started decreasing the flocks of Laban. Well, I can tell you that caused a lot of tension to rise up in the family. And so it's revealed in these verses. Now, this is in Genesis 31, verses 1 and 2. Now Jacob heard the words of Laban's sons, saying, "Jacob has taken away all that was our father's, and from what was our father's he has acquired all of his wealth." And Jacob saw the countenance of Laban, and indeed it was not favorable toward him as before. So Jacob knows that things are not in good shape with his in-laws. How about you? I mean, do you get along with your in-laws? I hope that things are going well with your in-laws, because they were not going well with Jacob. I can tell you that. So Jacob, he needs to do something. And about this time, God spoke to him. Isn't that wonderful how God's timing in? And here's what God said in verse 3 of Genesis 31. "Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your family, and I will be with you." Listen, that was exactly what Jacob needed to hear. Can you imagine him? Because he's already wanting to get out from under the control of his uncle and all of his tricks. In fact, the Bible says that Laban had changed his wages 10 times. And he wanted to, and about that time, he had about all he could stand, and God spoke to him, and he said, I want you to go back. And you know what Jacob did? He went to his wives, and he talked to his wives, and got their opinion and their advice. He consulted with them, and you know what they said? They said, we need to go, because our father's not been good to us either. We need to leave. And so, and that he decided to do. But we know that Jacob still has a little bit of craftiness in him. So he's thinking, how am I going to do all of this? So he comes up with this plan. I'm going to leave in the nighttime, the middle of the night, and I'm not going to tell my uncle. So he gets all of his family together, all of his herds and all of his flocks, and right in the middle of the night, he leaves. And he takes off, and he doesn't tell his father-in-law. Now, it took 3 days before his father-in-law found out that he had left. What do you think he did? He was really, really mad. In fact, he was so mad, he gathered a bunch of people together and he pursued Jacob. In fact, he did in a hot and a heavy way, and he did it so aggressively because he was so mad and so angry, and then he caught up with him. But before he talked to Jacob, this is what happened. Let's read about it. And it's in Genesis 31 and 20 and 24. But God came to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night and said to him, be careful that you speak to Jacob neither good nor bad. Well, he was good. Listen, when he finally met Jacob and started talking to him, he was hot. And he told Jacob, he said, I have it in my power to do you hurt, to do you harm. He said, but God, your God has spoken to me in a dream and told me not to do anything. And I just thought that was really interesting. So they had a big, long powwow there. And they made a covenant with one another. And finally, they kind of made amends. And then they kissed each other and hugged each other, all the wives and all the children and all them. And then they separated. And then Laban went his way, and Jacob's going to go his way. Now, you would think, wow, all of this hardship and all this difficulty is now behind Jacob. Everything's going to be okay, but that's not true. All of his troubles are not over, because now we're going to see in our next lesson what happens when Jacob meets his brother Esau. But until then, you'll just have to join us next time, and we'll pick it up then. Listen, we appreciate you tuning in today, and we hope you have a really good week.